Good afternoon everybody and welcome to the stream. I'm Robert from the El Magnifico Games channel, and today we are going to continue with our usual Wednesday poetry and riddles. So let's get straight into it. Last week we finished on The Triumph by Ben Jonson. This gentleman is who Ben Jonson was, an English playwright and poet. Born 1572, died 1637. And we will start the streams we usually do by rereading the last poem we read last time. So, The Triumph. See the chariot at hand here of love, wherein my lady rideth. Each that draws is a swan or a dove, and well the car love guideth. As she goes, all hearts do duty unto her beauty, and enamoured do wish so they might but enjoy such a sight, that they still were to run by her side, through swords, through seas, whither she would ride. Do but look on her eyes, they do light all that love's world all that love's world compriseth. Do but look on her hair, it is bright as the love star when it riseth. Yes, threaten do, alas, I fear, as little as I hope from thee. I know thou canst not show nor bear more hatred than thou hast to me. My tender first and simple years thou didst abuse and then betray, since stirredst up jealousies and fears when all the causes were away. Then in a soil hast planted me, where breath the basest of thy fools, where envious arts professed be, and pride the ignorance the schools. Where nothing is examined, weighed, but as 'tis rumoured, so believed, where every freedom is betrayed, and every goodness taxed or grieved. But what we're born for we must bear, our frail condition it is such, that what to all may happen here, if 't chance to me I must not grutch. Else I my state should much mistake, to harbour a divided thought from all my kind, that for my sake there should be a miracle be wrought. No, I do not know that I was born to age, misfortune, sickness, grief, but I will bear these with that scorn as shall not need thy false relief. But who should less expect from you, in whom alone love lies again, by whom he is restored to men, and kept and bred and brought up true? His falling temples you have reared, the withered garlands ta'en away, his altars kept that decay, that envy wished and nature feared, and on them burned so chaste a flame, with so much loyalty's expense, as love to acquit such excellence, is gone himself into your name. And you are he, the deity, to whom all lovers are designed, that would their better objects find, among which faithful troop abide, who as an offering at your shrine have sung this hymn, and here entreat one spark of your diviner heat to light upon a love of mine, which if it kindle not, but scant appear, and that to shortest view, yet give me leave to adore in you what I in her am grieved to want. Yes, as before, it seems like a reasonably challenging poem. But we had a look at it last week, so we will move on fairly shortly to a poem that we haven't seen yet, which we will do a deeper analysis of. I do apologise about the quality of that reading there. I do realise it could have been better. Anyway, like I say, we looked at that poem last week, so we move on to A Farewell to the World. This is also by Ben Jonson. Oh, and it's extremely short. A Farewell to the World. False world, good night, since thou hast brought the hour upon my morn of age. Henceforth I quit thee from my thought, my part is ended on thy stage. Short and succinct, isn't it? seems like an epitaph by nature, although I do notice that the next set of poems appear to be entitled Epitaphs by Ben Jonson. This poem obviously continues the theme of poems which are contemplations on death, of which we've seen quite a few. Looks to be iambic tetrameter to me. Yep. And the rhyming scheme is ABAB. But of course it's so short. There's not much space for a more complex structure. Perhaps it's me, but I can't read much more meaning into that. As in, it seems to be, although very eloquently written, a fairly straightforward, well, a farewell to the world, as it's entitled, and nothing more. I suppose the only interesting part is that he refers to it as a false world. I don't think he means that in the sense that the world isn't real, but that the world itself, or rather life in this world, can involve a great deal of deception and betrayal, would be my guess, which I suppose gives a sense of sorrow associated with this poem. I wonder what it means by that hour upon my morn of age. What would a morn of age mean? I mean, is morn being used here as a shortening of morning? Jenny says, or maybe a resentful feeling towards a particular prevalent social norm at the time. That's possible. If that's the case, I'm not sure what that would be, though. Yes, now poetic, morning. So it says, since thou hast brought that hour upon my morn of age. Which, yeah, I can't fully pass. Perhaps by morning, it refers poetically to the beginning of something. Like reaching a milestone in life. Like I suppose you could refer to turning... to reaching the age of majority as the morning of my adulthood or something like that, and by morn of age he means the big milestone that you reach upon becoming very aged, so death. That would be my best guess. Anywho, I think we've rather overanalyzed these 4 lines, so we may as well keep going. So we have epitaphs. This one on Elizabeth L.H. I don't know who Elizabeth L.H. was. Let's quickly check that she doesn't show up. That's true. Sorry, when I said that's true, where I was going with that is I'm checking the Wikipedia entry for Ben Jonson for Elizabeth, and then it mentioned that he was alive when Queen Elizabeth was on the throne, and that's why I said that's true. She was alive at that point, but I'm not convinced she's Elizabeth L.H. I don't know what Queen Elizabeth I's full title would have been, but she was obviously Elizabeth Tudor, so that wouldn't be her full name, and she would obviously have been Her Majesty, so LH isn't a reference to that. So this is probably a different Elizabeth. It's not going to be Elizabeth Sidney. Yeah, I don't see... So I don't think we know who this Elizabeth was, but I would say that given that there was a Queen Elizabeth on the throne, it must have been a very popular name at that point, I would have thought. So, on Elizabeth L.H. Wouldst thou hear what man can say in a little? Reader, stay. Underneath this stone doth lie as much beauty as could die, which in life did harbour give to more virtue than doth live. If at all she had a fault, leave it buried in this vault. One name was Elizabeth, the other let it sleep with death. Fitter where it died to tell than that it lived at all. Farewell. Interesting. I think that's iambic tetrameter. And it appears to be in rhyming couplets. So that covers rhythm and rhyme. As for meaning, it obviously is an epitaph. This is exactly the sort of thing that might be written on a gravestone. In fact, perhaps it was. Certainly it's very complimentary with verses like as much beauty as could die. Although I do note that's only 7 syllables. So as the previous one, underneath this stone doth lie. Did I make a mistake as to the meter? Which in life did harbour give. Oh yeah, it's only 7. Ah. In which case I amend what I said. I'm not sure this is iambic. I think it may be trochaic, looking at verses like, if at all she had a fault. There's going to be a tendency to want to stress the first syllable, and because there's an odd number of syllables, we end up on a stressed beat as well on the end. So it's more like a trochaic tetrameter with the final syllable docked to give it a masculine ending. Anywho, as for meaning, so I find it particularly interesting where it says one name was Elizabeth, the other let it sleep with death. Fitter where it died to tell than that it lived at all. Farewell. I wonder what this other name is supposed to be. You would assume that it is a surname. But if that were the case, why is there a suggestion that we should let it sleep with death? Almost as if it's something undesirable. Unless it's actually an allusion to a pet name or something like that. That now that she's passed on, obviously any relationships have necessarily come to an end. So perhaps that's what it's an allusion to. Right, so what does it mean? Fitter where it died to tell than that it lived at all. Ooh, that's interesting. Fitter where it died to tell than that it lived at all. Well, the topic at that point must surely be this other name, because that's the last thing that was referenced. The other, let it sleep with death. Fitter where it died to tell than that it lived at all. To tell than it lived at all. I'm not sure, I'm having trouble passing that one as well. Fitter to tell than that it lived at all. No. I feel like I'm missing something obvious, but I can't fully pass that. But anyway, we do indeed have an epitaph here, and broadly speaking, quite a nice one. It's only the last 4 verses which are giving me trouble. If you have any theories as to what those verses might be about, then by all means leave them in chat and we can discuss. For now, I will carry on to On Salathiel Pavi, a child of Queen Elizabeth's chapel. Interesting. I wonder what Queen Elizabeth's chapel was. I mean, you'd assume a chapel, and you would assume an association with Queen Elizabeth I, but more specifically, where was it? What was the association with the Queen? Is this someone that, is this child someone that Queen Elizabeth would have known in person? Or was this more of a, we have this chapel, we're naming it in honour of the Queen because that's the politic thing to do, but the Queen may not have even heard of us, sort of affair. I don't know. Let's read. Weep with me, all you that read this little story, and know for whom a tear you shed, death's self is sorry. 'Twas a child that so did thrive in grace and feature, as heaven and nature seemed to strive, which owned the creature. Years he numbered scarce 13, when fates turned cruel, yet 3 filled zodiacs had he been, the stage's jewel. Nor for my peace will I go far, as wanderers do that still do roam, but make my strength, such as they are, here in my bosom and at home. Oh goodness, that was a powerful one, wasn't it? So it was a child that died at 12 then. Sorry, 3. Wait. Years he numbered scarce 13, when fates turned cruel, yet 3 filled zodiacs had he been, the stage's jewel. Got it. He was 13 years old. Not sure where I got 12 from, sorry. But 3 filled zodiacs. Now the zodiac, how does that work? That's another way of saying year, isn't it? I was trying to think, how could you have a zodiac without it being a complete cycle of the zodiac without it being a year? It is a year. I was being silly. So the stage's jewel suggests that this was a child actor, I would suggest, unless this is some other sort of stage, a metaphorical stage. So this was a child of 13 who had been acting professionally for 3 years, it sounds like, so since they were 10. I do find it interesting that they refer to them as a child of 13. I realise that coincides with what we would say today. We would generally say that someone's not an adult until they've reached the age of maturity of 18. But, of course, that's just one culture and one legal system. My understanding was that in the past people were considered to be adults much younger. And the fact that this child was, it would appear, working also supports the fact that they would have been treated with respect by their family and peers, because presumably they were earning money and therefore helping to support people. But here is evidence that in Elizabethan times 13 was still considered a child. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just drawing attention to that. Anyway. So, what do we have? We have... So, we have... It's more like a... rhyme. It's more like rhyming couplets of... an iambic hexameter in terms of its rhythm and rhyme, except that after every 7th syllable there's a... well, there's a new line, isn't there, which, given that there's not a caesura between it and the line that follows, is going to tend to cause you to lengthen the pronunciation of the previous... of the word that that terminates every odd-numbered verse. So read, shed, thrive, strive, and so on. Oh no, thrive and strive, so it is a more complex rhyming structure than that. So it's 7 and 5 syllables each. Interesting. So it's an ABAB rhyming scheme. Okay, that makes sense. "'Twas a child that so did thrive." Okay, that's trochaic. "In grace and feature." That's iambic, but it does seem to... I do think there is a degree to which this resembles hexameter. Although it's trochaic, not iambic. "As heaven and nature seem to strive..." How does that work? "As heaven and nature seemed to strive..." Oh no, that's 9. "Which owned the creature." That brings us up to 14. Have I just miscounted atrociously? "'Twas a child that so did thrive..." No, that's 7. "Years he numbered scarce 13..." 7. "Yet 3-filled zodiacs had he been..." 9. "The stage's jewel." Okay, I think the meter must be a bit broken and wrenched then. Either that or I'm missing something. Certainly at the end it changes considerably because the final verse and the verse that's 2 before the final verse are much longer than the even number verses up till then. Yeah, it has quite a complex structure. And irregular. Let's give that another reading. "Weep with me, all you that read this little story, and know for whom a tear you shed death's self is sorry. 'Twas a child that so did thrive in grace and feature, as heaven and nature seemed to strive, which owned the creature. Years he numbered scarce 13, when fates turned cruel. Yet threefold zodiacs had he been, the stage's jewel. Nor for my peace will I go far, as wanderers do that still do roam, but make my strengths, such as they are, here in my bosom and at home. The last two verses are interesting. It suggests a very private way of finding closure, if I understand correctly. Oh, I just had a thought. Benjamin Johnson, he was a playwright. So this is quite probably someone that he did actually know in person. I mean, I know that was quite likely anyway, since you don't usually write epitaphs of people you don't know unless they're very famous or something like that, but this may have been quite personal. Yeah, the more I read it, the more the structure seems irregular, so I have to admit, even if the structure is irregular, it does sound very nice when read aloud. Certainly there's evidence here of a good ear. Anywho, let's keep going. The Noble Balm, also by Ben Jonson. High-spirited friend, I send nor balms nor corsives to your wound. Your fate hath found a gentler and more agile hand to tend the cure of that which is but corporeal, and doubtful days which were named critical have made their fairest flight, and now are out of sight. And yet doth some wholesome physic for the mind wrapped in this paper lie, which in the taking if you misapply, you are unkind. Your covetous hand, happy in that fair honour it hath gained, must now be reined. True valour doth her own renown command in one full action, nor have you now more to do than be a husband of that store. Think but how dear you bought this fame which you have caught. Such thoughts will make you more in love with truth. 'Tis wisdom, and that high, for men to use their fortune reverently, even in youth. He leaped the present age, possessed with holy rage, to see that bright eternal day, of which we priests and poets say such truths as we expect for happy men. And there he lives with memory and Ben, who sung this of him ere he went himself to rest, or taste a part of that full joy he meant to have expressed in this bright asterism, where it were friendship's schism, were not his Lucius long with us to tarry, to separate these twi light the Dioscuri, and keep one half from his Harry. But fate doth so alternate the design, whilst that in heaven this light on earth must shine. And shine as you exalted are, two names of friendship but one star, of hearts a union, and those not by chance made or indenture or leased out to advance the profits for a time. No pleasure vain did chime of rhymes or riots at your feasts, orgies of drink or feigned protests, but simple love of greatness and of good, that knits brave minds and manners more than blood. This made you first know the why you liked, then after to apply, and did act what now we moan, old men so duly, as soothed the passe thought him one, he played so truly. So by error to his fate they all consented, but viewing him since, alas, too late, they have repented, and have sought to give new birth in baths to steep him, but being so much too good for earth, heaven vows to keep him. Interesting. So of course this isn't an epitaph. I do note it has a structure of its own. It's quite clear. Ooh, actually the structure changes quite a lot. I was going to say it looked like it was another case where the poet has invented a structure for themselves, which they then reinforce by repeating it throughout, and certainly that looks to be the case of the first two stanzas. But after that, it becomes a lot more irregular. Is there a consistent rhyming scheme? ABBA? Nope. Then we have rhyming couplets, I think. Although corporeal and critical are only half rhymes. Mind, lie, misapply, unkind. And then we end with ABBA again. So I'd expect to see that here, which we seem to. So we have ABBA, then a bunch of rhyming couplets, and ABBA again. Then what do we have? More rhyming couplets. Then ABBA. Rhyming couplets. And ABBA again? No. Harry design. That doesn't work. No, it just carries on with rhyming. It's design and shine and Dioscuri and Harry. So yeah, that just carries on with rhyming couplets. More rhyming couplets. Julie truly, fate late, consented repented. So then we go to ABAB. So yep, very irregular structure. Generally speaking, borrowing from the poet's repertoire, these are all well recognised techniques, but quite irregularly applied. I won't bother looking at the rhythm of it in any more detail because it clearly is irregular as well. Right, let's go through it line by line and see if we can't get some... make some more sense of it. High-spirited friend, I send nor balms nor corsives to your wound. What's a corsive? Also, why is there an apostrophe there? Obsolete, corrosive, medicine, a corrosive. Something damaging or annoying, an inconvenience and evil. Okay, so I'm not helping you or hindering you, I suppose, and it implies, well, states that the person being addressed is wounded in some way. Your fate have found a gentler and more agile hand to tend. The cure of that which is but corporeal. Your fate have found a gentler and more agile hand to tend. The cure of that which is but corporeal. So perhaps this is a reference to either a doctor or some other caregiver, like a partner. So it seems to be suggesting that fate itself has found someone that's better at the job of curing physical injury. And doubtful days which were named critical have made their fairest flight and now are out of sight. Oh, so it sounds like this person is recovering from some terrible affliction. Yet doth some wholesome physic for the mind wrapped in this paper lie, which in taking it if you misapply, you are unkind. Okay, what do they mean by physic? Relating to or concerning existent materials, physical, unlikely. A medicine or drug, especially a cathartic or purgative. The art or profession of healing disease, medicine. Yes, that's the sense. Sorry, no, obsolete a physician. That's the sense which leapt to my mind, but clearly that's not what it is. Seems more likely in this case they mean it to mean a medicine. And natural philosophy, physics. Okay. So yeah, probably medicine or drug. Yet doth some wholesome physic for the mind wrapped in this paper lie, which in the taking if you misapply, you are unkind. Interesting to suggest that if they misapply it, they're unkind. I mean, is this mixing up the imagery of an affliction and medicine with the idea of someone deliberately or accidentally taking some correspondence the wrong way? Because if I understand this correctly, it seems interesting that they would accuse him of being unkind if the medicine, which is the message of this poem, is misapplied. Right, let's carry on. Your covetous hand. Okay, so to be covetous of something is to desire it, often or usually in a negative sense. To covet something is to be jealous of something else, of something that someone else has, and in particular something which you have no right to be jealous of. Happy in that fair honour it hath gained, must now be reigned. Interesting. Why would a hand gain honour? Is this addressed to somebody else who is a poet or playwright? Could this be a reference to them being a very ambitious playwright, and someone which now due to an affliction has to stop writing, or something along those lines? True valour doth her own renown command in one full action, nor have you now more to do than be a husband of that store. Again, this is sounding more like true valour doth her own renown command in one full action. I can't fully pass that because it sounds like it's saying that those that do valorous acts are naturally become renowned. But that seems irrelevant to the discussion at hand, so I'm doubtful of that interpretation. As for nor have you now more to do than be a husband of that store, it sounds like the time for valorous acts is over and you just need to settle down to a quiet life, which is again consistent with this possible interpretation I was suggesting before, whereby this is someone that's become afflicted by something and now has to live a quieter life. Think but how dear you bought this fame with which you have caught. Such thoughts will make you more in love with truth. 'Tis wisdom, and that high, for men to use their fortune reverently, even in youth. Again, more evidence that this is someone who was ambitious and obtained a lot of success while young. He leaped the present age, possessed with holy rage, to see that bright eternal day, of which we priests and poets say such truths as we expect for happy men, and there he lives with memory and Ben Jonson. Oh, I didn't notice that the first time. The way they've split the Obviously, I realised that the poet was referring to himself, and I recognised both Ben and Johnson being references to himself, but I didn't notice how he'd positioned it so that the end of one stanza joins onto the beginning of the next to make his name. So, this is a little confusing. For men to use their fortune reverently even in youth, he leaped the present age, possessed with holy rage, to see that bright eternal day, of which we priests and poets say, such truths as we expect for happy men. See, this sounds like it's talking about someone that's passed on. References to that bright eternal day, but that seems inconsistent with what we've read up till now, so I'm not entirely sure. And Ben Jonson, who sung this of him ere he went himself to rest. Soon he went himself to rest. That's ere as soon, isn't it? Or does it mean before? At an earlier time. Okay. As in ere long, before long. That makes sense. Before he went himself to rest, or taste a part of that full joy he meant to have expressed in this bright asterism. Right, what's asterism? An unofficial constellation, small group of stars that forms a visible pattern. The Big Dipper, Summer Triangle and Orion's Belt are asterisms. A rarely used topographical symbol, 3 asterisks arranged in a triangle, used to call attention to a passage or to separate sub-chapters in a book. Mineralogy, a star-shaped figure exhibited by some crystals by reflecting light, as in a star sapphire, or by transmitted light, as in some mica. Seems very likely then that it's referring to the constellation sense. And literally it just means group of stars in Greek. Okie doke. So where were we? Or taste a part of that full joy he meant to have expressed in this bright asterism, where it were friendship's schism. Nope, not following that. Unless this bright asterism is a reference to the poem itself, in which case what we learn is that he's trying to express full joy, but that seems a little doubtful. Why would you... I feel like I'm missing something. Where it were friendship's schism, were not his Lucius long with us to tarry. Lucius, that's a name. I don't know whose name it is. I don't know who's being referred to here, though. To separate these twi. What's twi? Oh, sorry, I didn't have that open. Exists in Middle English. Twice, 2 times. I doubt it. No, it's possible to separate these twi. Maybe. I mean, not really. That would make sense if it was 2. So separate these twi... Oh, these twilights. Duh. Okay, that makes sense. To separate these twilights, the Dioscuri. Dioscuri? Either of the twins Castor and Pollux. Or an inseparable couple. Were not his Lucius long with us to tarry, to separate these twilights, the Dioscuri, and keep the one half from his Harry? but fate doth so alternate the design, whilst that in heaven this light on earth must shine. I'm just not following it, I'm sorry. And shine as you exalted are, two names of friendship but one star, of heart the union, and those not by chance, made or indenture or leased out to advance, the profits for a time, no pleasures vain did chime, or rhymes or riots at your feasts, orgies of drink or feigned protests, the simple love of greatness and of good, that knits brave minds and manners more than blood. This made you first to know the why you liked, then after to apply, and did act what now we moan, old men so duly. As soothed the passe fought him one, he played so truly, so by error to his fate they all consented, but viewing him since, alas, too late, they have repented, and have sought to give new birth, in baths to steep him, but being so much too good for earth, heaven vows to keep him. No, I can't follow it. I'm sorry. Clearly this poem is beyond me at present. I mean, I do get... Obviously, I picked up on the themes of friendship, of discord, of separation, but also of union, and the idea of affliction and even death. But I haven't been able to tie it all together and fully understand what's being expressed here. Sorry about that. So I guess we'll move on. Part of an ode to the immortal memory and friendship of that noble pair, Sir Lucius Carey and Sir H. Morrison. Oh, I wonder if that's Henry Morrison. In which case, this could be the inseparable pair that was being referred to here. So perhaps then the poem we just read was something like a correspondence trying to console the surviving member of that pair after the death of the other, or something like that, whilst also touching lightly on the subject of how their life will change after they've passed on. That is, the other one has passed on. Still, that's only a working theory, I could be well off. So, let's carry on with this one. A part of an ode. It is not growing like a tree, in bulk doth make man better be, or standing long an oak 300 year, to fall a log at last, dry, bald, and sere. A lily of a day is fairer far in May, although it fall and die that night, it was the plant and flower of light. In small proportions we just beauty see, and in short measures life may perfect be. Call, noble Lucius, then, for wine, and let thy looks with gladness shine. Accept this garland, plant it on thy head, and think, nay no, thy Morrison's not dead. He leaped to the present age, possessed with holy rage, to see that bright eternal day, of which we priests and poets say such truths as we expect for happy men, and there he lives with memory. And Ben Jonson, who sung this of him, ere he went himself to rest, or taste a part of that full joy he meant to have expressed, and this bright asterism, where it were friendship's schism, were not his Lucius long with us to tarry, to separate these light the dioscuri, and keep the one half from his Harry. But fate doth so alternate the design, whilst that in heaven this light on earth must shine. And shine as you exalted are, two names of friendship but one star, of hearts a union, and those not by chance, made or indenture or leased out to advance, the profits for a time, no pleasures vain did chime, or rhymes or riots at your feasts, orgies of drink or feigned protests, the simple love of greatness and of good, that knit brave minds and manners more than blood. This made you first to know the why you liked them, then after to apply, that liking and approach so won the t'other, till either grew a portion of the other, each styled by his end, the copy of his friend, who lived to be the great surnames and titles by which all made claims unto the virtue, nothing perfect done, but as a Carey or a Morrison. And such the force the fair example had, as they that saw the good and durst not practice it were glad that such a law was left yet to mankind, where they might read and find friendship indeed was written, not in words, and with the heart, not pen, of two so early men. His lines her rules were and records, who, ere the first down bloomed on the chin, had sowed these fruits and got the harvest in. So yes, it sounds like I did notice obviously that large parts of this poem were the same as the previous one, so it does sound like that's broadly speaking. The interpretation I gave just now was broadly speaking correct. It seems like there were two friends who Sir Lucius Carey and Sir Harry Morrison, who grew extremely attached to each other and became known very much as an inseparable pair, who apparently did admirable things together, and for whom tragically one of the pair died quite young, it sounds like. It's interesting. I wish I were able to understand it a bit better, but there we are. So let's press on. So, John Donne, Daybreak. Looks like... Wait, why would... That's interesting. I think that's a misprint. I was wondering why it was going back to Ben Jonson after we'd moved on to John Donne. Is that actually the same page repeated? Yes. And we have a page missing. Oh, okay. That's annoying. Fortunately, I do have a physical copy of this anthology. Oh, there's the missing page. Huh. What about 229? Do we have that? If we do, it must be further down. Yeah, it looks like this section of this PDF is... there's 229. Is somewhat in error. Alright, do we have 231? They're clearly out of order and I'm trying to figure out if there's any missing pages. Looks like after that it continues correctly, but for the fact that the page 231 is missing. And as I say, they are quite out of order. Okay. Like I say, that's not the end of the world in so much as I have a physical copy of this anthology, so whichever page is missing, I will still be able to read for you. But obviously we won't be able to have it on screen, which is a shame. So let's find out who John Donne was. Hold on. I just had a thought. Is that why it seemed to repeat itself? Yes, this whole section's a bit iffy, I think. Wait, is that the reason? Part of an ode. 223, 224, 225. Okay, that's all correct. What about previously? 221, 224, 223. Okay, that's what went wrong. So when I was reading The Noble Balm, it suddenly jumped ahead to part of an ode. So that explains, or at least partially explains, why I had so much difficulty understanding it. Because little did I realise, I was actually reading two different poems. Okay, I do apologise about that. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to find the relevant pages in my physical copy of the anthology. I will read them out. I will probably keep the analysis to a minimum for now. That way we'll be able to move through them more quickly, and as a result it will be a shorter section that you are left without it being on screen, because I'm not going to try and skip around and show you all the right pages at the right time, because I think that will just get in the way of the reading. It will just be irritating. Okay, so I think by 233 the page numbers sort themselves out, it looks like, and the page numbers started to go wrong on just after 221. Okay, so that's about 12 pages. So yeah, that's the plan. I'll read through them moderately quickly. But using the using the original and correct text, as opposed to this PDF that seems slightly in error. Okie doke. So how shall we do this? I suppose I will probably suspend analysis of rhythm and rhyme for now, unless something really sticks out to me as remarkable, but we will briefly discuss meaning at the end of each poem. So, and I probably will stop to look up any poets who we haven't encountered yet. Yep, that sounds good. Right, let's get to it. Part of an ode to the... Oh wait, no, I want to go back one page. The Noble Balm by Ben Jonson. High-spirited friend, I send nor balms nor courses to your wound. Your fate have found a gentler and more agile hand to tend the cure of that which is but corporeal, and doubtful days which were named critical have made their fairest flight, and now are out of sight. Yet doth some wholesome physic for the mind wrapped in this paper lie, which in the taking if you misapply, you are unkind. Your covetous hand, happy in that fair honour it hath gained, must now be reigned. True valour doth her own renown command in wonderful action, nor have you now more to do than be a husband of that store. Think but how dear you bought this fame which you have caught. Such thoughts will make you more in love with truth. 'Tis wisdom, and that high, for men to use their fortune reverently, even in youth. That is apparently the entire... That was in fact the entire poem. Okay. I do notice the next thing it goes on to is these ones. Yes, okay, so these were out of order as well. Have we even seen 220? I don't think we have. I think that... Yes, we have. Oh, so this was out of order as well. Alright, 217. 220. So it just skipped a load. I think this was another one that I mentioned having some difficulty with, and it's seeming quite irregular. No wonder. Okay. So that was the Noble Balm. What do I make of it now that I know that that's the entire poem? Oh, I wonder if the covetous hand is a reference to the same hand as above, where it says a gentler and more agile hand to tend. Yeah. It's hard to be sure, but it sounds to me like the Noble Balm might be a cautionary note to a friend about how, well, you gained great success by great ambition and overleaping yourself, and now it's probably time to retire and use that wealth wisely. That's the impression I get. So, how far back has this been causing a problem? So I read the shadow properly, but the triumph is completely wrong. Okay. So that means that from the very beginning of this stream, an hour ago, I was reading things incorrectly. And I think that means that I probably read them incorrectly last week as well, and didn't even realise until now. Okay. That's one to keep an eye out for. Alright, so we'll start from 217 by reading the triumph and going forwards. We'll skip over the Noble Balm on 221 because I've just read that, and then we'll keep on going until we get to 233, which is where the pages seem to correct themselves. So, Ben Jonson, the triumph. See the chariot at hand here of love, wherein my lady rideth, each that draws is a swan or a dove, and well the car love guideth, as she goes all hearts do duty unto her beauty, and enamoured do wish so they might but enjoy such a sight, that they still were to run by her side, through swords, through seas, whither she would ride. Do but look on her eyes, they do light all that love's world compriseth. Do but look on her hair, it is bright as love's star when it riseth. Do but mark her forehead smoother than words that soothe her, and from her arched brows such a grace sheds itself through the face, as alone there triumphs to the life, all the gain, all the good of the elements' strife. Have you seen but a bright lily grow, before rude hands have touched it? Have you marked but the fall of the snow, before the soil hath smutched it? Have you felt the wool of the beaver, or swan's down ever, or have smelt o' the bud o' the briar, or the nard in the fire, or have tasted the bag of the bee? Oh so white, oh so soft, oh so sweet is she. What a lovely little poem. Clearly it is another poem, yet another poem I should say, of a romantic nature, where it is largely a long drawn out compliment of a female figure of romantic interest. And it also appeals heavily to the... That's not quite the right word, is it? It appeals heavily to the what would have been the audience's notion of the feminine ideal at that time. So things like being white, not that, which I should point out, strictly speaking, isn't a comment on race. that it refers to having pale skin, which at that time in that place would have been the ideal, as in skin as white as snow, which isn't inclusive of other races, but also the within Northern Europe at that time, the racial makeup of the populace would have been far more homogenous, I strongly suspect. So I suppose what I'm getting at is I don't think this ideal of whiteness was strictly speaking prejudiced so much as it was narrow-minded, if that makes sense. But anyway, feminine ideals such as being white and soft and the obligatory comparisons to flowers, that sort of thing. Right. That's that one. What was I going to look up? The nard in the fire. What is a nard? A flowering plant of the valerian family that grows in the Himalayas, used as a perfume and incense, as a sedative and a herbal medicine. A fragrant oil from the plant, formerly much prized. I see. I didn't know that. Interesting. Right, next we move on to an elegy. Though beauty be the mark of praise, and yours of whom I sing be such, as not the world can praise too much, yet 'tis your virtue now I raise. A virtue like a lay so gone, throughout your form as, though that move, and draw and conquer all men's love, this subjects you to love of one. Wherein you triumph yet, because 'tis of your flesh, and that you use the noblest freedom not to choose against or faith or honour's laws. But who should less expect from you, in whom alone love lives again, by whom he is restored to men, and kept and bred and brought up true? His falling temples you have reared, the withered garlands ta'en away, his altars kept from that decay, that every wished and nature feared. And on them burned so chaste a flame, with so much law at his expense, as love to acquit such excellence, is God himself into your name. And you are he, the deity, to whom all lovers are designed, that would their better objects find, among which faithful troop am I, who as an offering at your shrine have sung this hymn, and here entreat one spark of your diviner heat, to light upon a love of mine, which if it kindle not, but scant appear, and that to the shortest view, yet give me leave to adore in you what I in her am grieved to want. So allay here is an archaic form of alloy, it would seem, as in to combine things together. The relevant verses are, a virtue like a lay so gone throughout your form as, though that move and draw and conquer all men's love, this subjects you to love of one. So it sounds like this poem, I mean it's called an elegy, so I assume this is a piece about someone that's passed on. It sounds like the stanza, which is as follows: but who should less expect from you, in whom alone love lives again, by whom he is restored to men, and kept and bred and brought up true, might be a reference to Love after loss. Yes, I could be wrong. It sounds like it's a poem about losing a lover and then the experience of going on to try to find another, and then perhaps missing things about the person that you lost. That would be my best interpretation. Could be wrong. So now we move on to A Farewell to the World. False world, good night. Since thou hast brought that hour upon my morn of age, henceforth I quit thee from my thought, my part is ended on thy stage. Yes, threaten do, alas, I fear, as little as I hope from thee. I know thou canst not show nor bear more hatred than thou hast to me. My tender, first, and simple years thou didst abuse and then betray, since stirredst up jealousies and fears when all the causes were away. Then in a soil hast planted me, where breath the basest of thy fools, where envious arts professed be, and pride and ignorance the schools, where nothing is examined, weighed, but as 'tis rumoured so believed, where every freedom is betrayed, and every goodness taxed or grieved. But what we're born for we must bear, a frail condition it is such, that what to all may happen here, if chance to me I must not grutch. Else my state should much mistake to harbour a divided thought from all my kind, that for my sake there should be a miracle be wrought. No, I do know that I was born to age, misfortune, sickness, grief, but I will bear these with that scorn as shall not need thy false reliefs. Nor for my peace will I go far, as wanderers do that still do roam, but make my strength such as they are, here in my bosom and at home. Interesting. I can't decide if this is a meditation on death, or if in fact this is actually making peace with the world, imperfect though it is. Because aside from the title, which is A Farewell to the World, and the reference to my part is ended on thy stage, there's not actually much there to suggest that the speaker has died. There's certainly references to being unhappy with the way the world is. No, I do not know that I was... Sorry. No, I do know that I was born to age, misfortune, sickness, grief. But then it goes on to say, but I will bear these with that scorn, as shall not need thy false relief. Which makes me think that it's more along the lines of I may be resentful about the way the world is, but that's life and I'm going to get on with it. I would say that I actually find this poem quite intriguing now that I have it in full. And it's probably one that I will go back to and look at in more detail at some point. Possibly not on stream, but like I say, I find quite a lot of the ideas there interesting. If you have anything that you'd particularly like to say or discuss about that one, please leave a comment. The next poem would be The Noble Balm, but we're skipping that because we've already read it. We'll skip the epitaph on Elizabeth L.H. because we've already read that one in full because it's contained on one page. And we'll move on to On Salathiel's Pavy, a Child of Queen Elizabeth's Chapel. Hold on. Let me check. I think we may have read that one in full as well, even though it's across 2 pages. Right, that's 222. That's 221, so we haven't. Okay. So that's the one we'll move on to now. On Salathiel's Pavy, a Child of Queen Elizabeth's Chapel. Weep with me, all you that read this little story, and know for whom a tear you shed, death's self is sorry. 'Twas a child that so did thrive in grace and feature, as heaven and nature seemed to strive, which owned the creature. Years he numbered scarce 13, when fates turned cruel, yet 3 filled zodiacs had he been the stage's jewel, and did act, what now we moan, old men so duly, as sooth the pass they fought him won, he played so truly. So, by error, to his fate they all consented, but, viewing him since, alas too late, they have repented, and have sought to give new birth in baths to steep him, but, being so much too good for earth, heaven vows to keep him. Goodness me. I originally said that this was a poem that was quite powerful, and I think it's even more so now I have it in its complete and proper form. I also noticed that the discrepancies in its form... Yep, they've disappeared. It's much more regular now. Yeah, it looks like it's 7 syllables on each odd numbered verse, followed by 5 on each even numbered verse, which makes 12 in total. The rhyming structure is alternately rhymed though, so it creates this interesting mixed meter where it's a bit like a hexameter, but you have a more complex rhyming scheme which would be involving internal rhyme if it weren't for the fact that each line is split, and that also means when reading it out you create a suspensory pause at the end of each odd numbered verse. It is quite clever. Well, I say after each odd numbered verse, some of them do end in a caesura, which would mean that you end up pausing after it instead of instead of prolonging the word. But in either case, yes. So that both resolves the... I think this is just a general theme. Now that I realise I've been reading all these poems wrongly, suddenly all the complex and irregular structures disappear, and they start to make a lot more sense. So it seems like what I was saying before about how these poems are just beyond me and so on. Well, I mean, that may be true to some degree, but a large part of it seems to have been down to the pages being messed up. I do apologise. So let's keep going. We move on to a part of an ode to the immortal memory and friendship of that noble pair, Sir Lucius Carey and Sir H. Morrison. Let me find the first page of that if I can for you. It is not growing like a tree, in bulk doth make man better, or standing long an oak, 300 year, to fall a log at last, dry, bald, and sere. A lily of a day is fairer far in May, although it fall and die that night. It was the plant and flower of light. In small proportions we just beauty see, and in short measures life may perfect be. Cool, noble Lucius, then for wine, and let thy looks with gladness shine. Accept this garland, plant it on thy head, and think, nay no, my Morison's not dead. He leaped the present age, possessed with holy rage, to see that bright eternal day, of which we priests and poets say such truths as we expect for happy men. And there he lives with memory. And Ben Jonson, who sung this of him, ere he went himself to rest, or taste a part of that full joy he meant to have expressed in this bright asterism, where it were friendship's schism, were not his Lucius long with us to tarry, to separate these twilights, the Dioscuri, and keep the one half from his Harry. But fate doth so alternate the design, while sat in heaven this light on earth must shine. And shine as you exalted are, to names of friendship, what but one star, of hearts a union, and those not by chance made, or indenture, or least out to advance the profits for a time. No pleasures vain did chime, or rhymes of riots at your feasts, orgies of drink or feigned protests, but simple love of greatness and of good, that knit brave minds and manners more than blood. This made you first to know the why you liked, then after to apply that liking and approach so one the t'other, till either grew a portion of the other. Each styled by his end the copy of his friend, you lived to be the great surnames and titles by which all made claims unto the virtue, nothing perfect done, but as a Carey or a Morison. And such the force the fair example had, as they that saw the good and durst not practise it were glad that such a law was left yet to mankind, where they might read and find friendship indeed was written, not in words, and with the heart, not pen, of two so early men, whose lines her rules were and records, who ere the first down bloomed on the chin, had sowed these fruits and got the harvest in. Yet again, that makes a lot more sense now, and it clearly is a somewhat touching story about two friends whose friendship ended prematurely due to an early death. So we move on to some poems by John Donne. Let's find out who John Donne was, and then we will begin reading them in the style that I have been doing so since we discovered the page anomalies. John Donne, 1571 or 72 to the 31st of March 1631, was an English poet, scholar, soldier and secretary born into a recusant family who later became a cleric in the Church of England. What's a recusant family? Recusancy was the state of those who remained loyal to the Catholic Church and refused to attend Church of England services after the English Reformation. Goodness me, that must have been unpleasant. Under royal patronage he was made... who later became a cleric in the Church of England. Oh, he was born into a recusant family, but then clearly he must have converted later on. Under royal patronage he was made Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, 1621 to 1631, is considered the preeminent representative of the metaphysical poets. His poetical works are noted for their metaphorical and sensual style and include sonnets, love poems, religious poems, Latin translations, epigrams, elegies, songs and satires. He is also known for his sermons. Donne's style is characterized by abrupt openings and various paradoxes, ironies and dislocations. These features, along with his frequent and dramatic or everyday speech rhythms, His tense syntax and his tough eloquence were both a reaction against the smoothness of conventional Elizabethan poetry and an adaptation into English of European Baroque and Mannerist techniques. Interesting, being of a Catholic background, I wonder if he was more familiar with the Baroque. I mean, I'm sure the Baroque was well known in England at this point, but if, for example, he ever travelled to the continent via his Catholic association, or indeed just read the poetry of such individuals, that may have been relevant to his later poetry. Anyway, his early career was marked by poetry that bore immense knowledge of English society. Another important theme in Donne's poetry is the idea of true religion, something that he spent much time considering and about which he often theorized. He wrote secular poems as well as erotic and love poems. He is particularly famous for his mastery of metaphysical conceits. Despite his great educational and poetic talents, Donne lived in poverty for several years, relying heavily on wealthy friends. He spent much of the money he inherited during and after his education on womanizing, literature, pastimes and travel. In 1601, Donne secretly married Anne More, with whom he had 12 children. In 1615 he was ordained Anglican deacon and then priest, although he did not want to take holy orders and only did so because the king ordered it. He served as a member of Parliament in 1601 and in 1614. The king ordered it, so that would presumably be James I. Interesting. Of course, given his Catholic background and his womanizing, it would have been impossible for him to become a cleric unless he had converted. Anyway, that's who he was. Sounds like an interesting chap. Let's get into it. So, Daybreak. Let me see if I can find the very beginning of that one for you. Stay, O sweet, and do not rise. The light that shines comes from thine eyes. The day breaks not, it is my heart, because that you and I must part. Stay, or else my joys will die, and perish in their infancy. Oh goodness me, that was it. That was a short one. I know it's an irregular structure and rhyming couplets. I would say it is a very sweet little 6-verse poem, isn't it? Quite like that one. Let's keep going. So next we're on to Song, which begins Go and Catch a Falling Star. Okay, this one's in order then. Is the next page in order? No. So I'll carry on reading from my physical copy of the anthology. Go and catch a falling star, get with child a mandrake root, tell me where all past years are, or who cleft the devil's foot, teach me to hear mermaids singing, or to keep off envy's stinging, and find what wind serves to advance an honest mind. If thou beest born to strange sights, things invisible to see, ride 10,000 days and nights, till aged snow white hairs on thee. Thou, when thou returnest, wilt tell me all strange wonders that befell thee, and swear nowhere lives a woman true and fair. If thou findest one, let me know. Such a pilgrimage were sweet, yet do not. I would not go. Thou at next door we might meet. Though she were true when we met her... Though she were true when you met her, at last till you write your letter, yet she will be false ere I come to 2 or 3. Oh, it was only 1 page anyway. Probably should have checked that. What was that last bit? Though she were true when you met her, at last till you write your letter, yet she will be false ere I come to 2 or 3. Before I come to 2 or 3. It does sound like a lewd allusion to undermining her virtue, doesn't it? The next door neighbour. I don't quite follow ere I come to 2 or 3. It's a clever little poem. I'm not sure the sentiments can be seen as entirely positive, but it's clever. I like to age snow, white hairs on thee, snow being used as a verb. And also the whole setup of, well, essentially a whole stanza talking about someone that's born to strange sights, travelling the world and so on, all just so he can set up this. And there's no woman who's both true and fair. And the bit where he says, and find what wind serves to advance an honest mind, which seems to excuse his he hasn't openly, up till then, indicated any bad behaviour on his part, although I do think that these are probably all subtle allusions to bad behaviour. Certainly I know mermaid was slang for a prostitute, so where it says teach me to hear mermaids singing, I was suspicious of that one. Also, who cleft the devil's foot? That also seems like it's probably a lewd allusion, but I can't be absolutely certain. And there's probably some sort of... Also, the get with child, a mandrake root. Again, I think there's probably something going on there that I'm missing. My point being, if these are allusions to bad behaviour, then and find what wind serves to advance an honest mind almost acts as an excuse for all this, as if, well, I don't know how to be a better person. Mandrake, a mandragora, a kind of tiny demon immune to fire. Any plant of the genus mandragora, certain of which are said to have medicinal properties. The root of these plants often resembles the shape of a small person, hence occasioning various mythic, magical or occult uses. Or a root of a mandrake plant that resembled human form, especially one kept or used for magic or occult purposes. I see. Yep, none of that's all that helpful. Sorry, I should have been showing this page. I suppose go and catch a falling star, get with child and mandrake root might just be a reference to occult practices, which would be seen as contrary to the proper behaviour of a devout follower of the Christian faith, but I'm guessing. Anywho, so yeah, I think I've dwelt on that one a bit long. All I have to say is I do appreciate the craftsmanship in it. It's cleverly written. So next we move on to that time in absence proves rather helps than hurts to loves. Which is indeed on a single page, it would seem. So let's see if we can find that somewhere. Yep, this is the one. Yep, right. That time in absence proves rather helps than hurts to loves. Absence, hear thou my protestation against thy strength, distance and length. Do what thou canst for alteration, for hearts of truest metal, absence doth join and time doth settle. Who loves a mistress of such quality, his mind hath found affection's ground, beyond time, place, and all mortality. To hearts that cannot vary, absence is present, time doth tarry. My senses want their outward motion, which now within reason doth win, redoubled by her secret notion, like rich men that take pleasure in hiding more than handling treasure. By absence's good means I gain, that I can catch her, where none can watch her, in some close corner of my brain. There I embrace and kiss her, and so enjoy her, and none miss her. Interesting. Unless I'm missing something, it is mostly a... what's the word? An assertion that... oh, what is it called? It's not absence makes a heart grow fonder. Oh, it is. Okay, I don't know why I thought otherwise. So yes, it looks to me like this poem is mostly an assertion that absence makes the heart grow fonder, although I do think there's probably other things going on, such as the reference to like rich men that take pleasure in hiding more than handling treasure. Oh no, I see, that's saying... that doesn't mean hiding in some lurid sense. It's stating that some people take more pleasure in hiding their wealth than in actually using it. I see. So that is then supporting the... by analogy, that's then supporting the overall message of the poem, which, as I say, I believe is absence makes a heart grow fonder. It's good. Well written. I do like the reference to catching her in some close corner of my brain. That's something which seems very human. Right, what do we move on to from here? The next one is entitled The Ecstasy, which again is on a page all of its own. Then we have The Dream, which is broken up, so I'll have to read that directly from my physical anthology. So, The Ecstasy, where, like a pillow on a bed, a pregnant bank swelled up to rest the violet's reclining head, sat we two, one another's best. Our hands were firmly cemented by a fast balm which thence did spring, our eye-beams twisted and did thread our eyes upon one double string. So to engraft our hands as yet was all the means to make us one, and pictures in our eyes to get was all our propagation. As twixt two equal armies fate, suspense and certain victory, our souls, which to advance their state were gone out, hung twixt her and me. And whilst our souls negotiate there, we like sepulchral statues lay, all day the same our postures were, and we said nothing all the day. Oh, goodness me. What a romantic notion. So they're sitting by the bank of a river, holding hands, with their eye-beams twisted, which is to say they were staring at each other, and while they didn't say a word, their souls negotiated. That's a very nice little poem, and entitled The Ecstasy, again, which adds additional meaning not in the text itself. Very nice. Right, let's keep this up. We've got, what, 5 more pages to do until the page numbers sort themselves out? Right, is 233 the first page that actually doesn't skip? Yes. So that's the page we want to finish on. Okie dokie, so we move on to The Dream. A moment ago I had it... I had that page up on screen. There we go. So again, I'll be reading this directly from my anthology, my physical copy, because the PDF apparently has the page numbers a bit messed up. The page order even. So, The Dream. Dear love, for nothing less than thee would I have broke this happy dream. It was a theme, for reason, much too strong for fantasy. Therefore thou walkest me wisely, yet my dream thou brokest not, but continuedst it. Thou art so true that thoughts of thee suffice to make dreams truths and fables histories. Enter these arms, for since thou thoughtest it best not to dream all my dream, let's act the rest. As lightning, or a taper's light, thine eyes, and not thy noise, waked me. Yet I thought thee, for thou lovest truth, an angel at first sight. But when I saw thou sawest my heart, and knewest my thoughts beyond an angel's art. When thou knewest what I dreamt, when thou knewest when excess of joy would wake me, and camest then, I must confess it could not choose but be profane to think thee anything but thee. Coming and staying thou showed thee, but rising makes me doubt that now thou art not thou. That love is weak where fear is as strong as he, 'tis not all spirit pure and brave. If mixture it of fear, shame, honour have, perchance as torches, which must ready be, when light and put out, so thou dealest with me, thou camest to kindle, goest to come, when I will dream that hope again, but else would die. This does seem very much like it's probably a poem about having a mistress, doesn't it? Which, you know, not here to judge, it just strikes me as ill politic for a priest to release a poem of that nature. Then again, look at the poems of his we've read so far, and I am to understand that these were poems I believe he was writing fairly early on. What were his dates again? He was born in 1571. Doesn't say when he was writing this poetry, but he didn't become... he didn't become married until 1601. When did he become... It wasn't until 1615 that he became an ordained Anglican deacon. Okie doke. So, yeah. These poems probably predate his clerical career. If I understood correctly, a lot of this poem is complimentary about the subject of the poem, the speaker's love interest, making comparisons to them as things like angels and what have you, although well written. And then it goes on to talk about how the main point of going away is so that one can come back, and that without the hope that they will be together again at some point, then one cannot bear... one would not be able to bear life anymore. So quite strong sentiments. Again, surprisingly strong for someone that's going to become a deacon, but what do I know? Perhaps those were... perhaps those sort of sentiments were typical of deacons at the time, I don't know. Right. We move on to a poem entitled The Funeral, and yet again the page orders are messed up on the PDF, so I'll be reading out of my physical copy. And this is still John Donne. The Funeral. Whoever comes to shroud me, do not harm nor question much that subtle wreath of hair about mine arm, the mystery, the sign you must not touch. For 'tis my outward soul, viceroy to that which, unto heaven being gone, will leave this to control, and keep these limbs her provinces from dissolution. For if the sinewy thread my brain lets fall through every part, can tie those parts, and make me one of all, those hairs which upward grew, and strength and art have from a better brain, can better do't, except she meant that I by this should know my pain, as prisoners then are manacled, when they're condemned to die. Whate'er she meant by bite, bury it with me, for since I am love's martyr, it might breed idolatry, if into other hands these reliquies came, as 'twas humility, to afford it all that a soul can do, so 'tis some bravery, that since you would have none of me, I bury some of you. Nope, no idea what that's going on about, to be honest. Where's the rest of the poem? Perhaps I can put that up on screen for you to compare. There. So let's go through it slowly. Whoever comes to shroud me, do not harm nor question much. Right, well, to shroud something would be to obscure it, wouldn't it? To put something over it like a shroud. So unless this is talking about, say, putting a shroud over a dead body or something like that, I'm not sure. The subtle wreath of hair about mine arm. Oh. Do not harm nor question much the subtle wreath of hair about mine arm. He has hairy arms? Sorry? I feel like I'm missing something here. The mystery, the sign you must not touch. For 'tis my outward soul, viceroy to that which, unto heaven being gone, will leave this to control, and keep these limbs, her provinces from dissolution. What? Your hairy arms are a manifestation of your soul, and it's going to preserve your body from decay? Is that what it's saying? I don't... What does it mean, unto heaven being gone? Oh, because the soul has gone to heaven. But she's left the hairy arms behind. Again, I feel like I'm missing something. Some important context here. For if the sinewy thread my brain lets fall through every part can tie those parts and make me one of all. I'm not sure what that's talking about. A sinewy thread that originates from his brain that's holding his body together? Those hairs which upward grew and strength and art have been from a better brain can't better do't, except she meant that I by this should know my pain, as prisoners then are manacled when they're condemned to die. So that sounds like the brain is somehow responsible for restraining him with his own hairy arms? Or the hair on his arms? Again, not making much sense. I think I'm missing something important here. Whatever she meant by bite, bury it with me, for since I am love's martyr, it might breed idolatry. Okay, this is more interesting. It might breed idolatry, so that's suggesting that people might want to worship his hairy arms after death because they're in some way a symbol of love? Again, I'm missing something here, clearly. If into other hands these relics came, as 'twas humility to afford to it all that a soul can do, so 'tis some bravery that, since you would have none of me, I bury some of you. Yeah, I don't get it. I'm missing something significant there, clearly. Anywho, we move on to a hymn to God the Father, which, yep, that's broken up. The page order's still wrong. Wilt thou forgive that sin where I begun, which was my sin, though it were done before? Wilt thou forgive that sin through which I run, and do run still, though still I do deplore? When thou hast done, thou hast not done, for I have more. Wilt thou forgive that sin which I have won others to sin, and made my sins their door? Wilt thou forgive that sin which I did shun a year or two, but wallowed in a score? When thou hast done, thou hast not done, for I have more. I have a sin of fear that when I've spun my last thread I shall perish on the shore, but swear by thyself that at my death thy sun shall shine as he shines now and henceforth, and have done that thou hast done, I fear no more. This sounds like it's a more straightforward religious sentiment. Finding absolution from one's sins in the worship of Jesus Christ, although, oh, maybe we don't even have this page here at all. Doesn't look like it. No, I think the second page is just... the second page over which this poem is spread is just missing. That's 231. But also references to hypocrisy and the nature of being a sinner. Okie doke. I think I'll give that one more slow read. Wilt thou forgive that sin where I begun, which was my sin, though it were done before? Wilt thou forgive that sin through which I run, and do run still, though still I do deplore? When thou hast done, thou hast not done, for I have more. Wilt thou forgive that sin which I have won others to sin, and made my sins their door? Wilt thou forgive that sin which I did shun a year or two, but wallowed in a score? Well, when thou hast done, thou hast not done, for I have more. I have a sin of fear, that when I've spun my last thread, I shall perish on the shore. But swear by thyself that at my death thy sun shall shine as he shines now and heretofore. And having done that thou hast done, I fear no more. Yes, I think I do like this poem, actually. It's quite a frank meditation on the nature of sin, but also ends on an optimistic note. Well written as well. What was I going to check? I was going to check something, wasn't I? I do like some of the use of language, like referring to the continual committing of a particular sin as running through a sin, for example. Heretofore, that's what I was going to check. Before now, until now, up to the present time, from the beginning to this point. Alright, next we move on to a poem entitled Death, which is only one page, but again, we don't seem to have a copy of that page, unfortunately. So, Death. Also by John Donne. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee... Sorry, let me start again. Death, by John Donne. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou thinkest thou dost overthrow, die not, poor Death, nor yet canst thou kill me. From rest and sleep, which but thy picture be, much pleasure then from thee much more must flow. And soonest our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. Thou art slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and dost with poison, war, and sickness dwell, and popular charms can make us sleep as well, and better than thy stroke. Why swellest thou then? One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. Again, very much embedded in the Christian faith, but quite powerful imagery. I make particular note of the reference to the poppy killing. Obviously that's a reference to the abuse of opiates. Clearly well known about even in Elizabethan England. I say that because I know the poppy itself was known about in antiquity as or rather opiates were. But you tend to think of the opiate problem reaching its worst in like Victorian times when opium dens were rampant, and of course you have the Opium War and stuff like that. But just goes to show they were well aware of it. Right, next we move on to a poem by Richard Barnfield called Philomel. Philomel, of course, being the Greek word for nightingale, I believe. Yes. Looks like this is the first page where the page order problem ends. So, who was Richard Barnfield? Richard Barnfield was an English poet. His obscure though close relationship with William Shakespeare has long made him interesting to scholars. It has been suggested that he was the rival poet mentioned in Shakespeare's sonnets. Wow, they've only got one poem from him here, so no point spending too much time reading about his life. We have some idea who he was. So, Philomel. As it fell upon a day, in the merry month of May, sitting in a pleasant shade, which a grove of myrtles made, beasts did leap and birds did sing, trees did grow and plants did spring, everything did banish moan, save the nightingale alone. She, poor bird, as all forlorn, leaned her breast up till a thorn, and there sung the dolefulest ditty, that to hear it was the great pity. Fee, 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 now would she cry, tiroo, by and by, that to hear her so complain, scarce I could from tears refrain, for her grief so lively shone, made me think upon mine own. Ah, thought I, thou mournest in vain, none takes pity on thy pain. Senseless trees, they cannot hear thee, ruthless beasts, they will not cheer thee. King Pandion, he is dead, all thy friends are lapped in lead. All thy fellow birds do sing, careless of thy sorrowing. Even so, poor bird, like thee, none alive will pity me. Ooh. What a melancholic poem. So who was King Pandion? Pandion, for mythical characters named Pandion, Pandion the First, Pandion the Second, Pandion Hero. I mean, I suppose it could be either of those two. Pandion the First, a legendary king of Athens, father of the sisters Procne and Philomela. That's almost certainly it, because Philomela would be named after the nightingale. Philomela is a minor figure in Greek mythology who is frequently invoked as a direct and figurative symbol in literary and artistic works in the Western canon. While the myth has several variations, the general depiction is that Philomela, after being raped and mutilated by her sister's husband, Tereus, obtains her revenge and is transformed into a nightingale, a bird renowned for its song. Because of the violence associated with the myth, the song of the nightingale is often depicted or interpreted as a sorrowful lament. In nature, the female nightingale is actually mute, and only the male of the species sings. And Pandion the First, well, as we know, he was the father of Philomela. So that will be why he's mentioned. Pandion married a naiad, Zeuxippe, and they had two sons, Erechtheus and Butes, I don't know how to pronounce it, and two daughters, Procne and Philomela. So, that explains it. Rhyming couplets, I note. Yep, looks like it's, I think that's a trochaic tetrameter with the final syllable docked. So it begins and ends on a strong beat. So in other words, it has a masculine ending. Seems like quite a common form, and I do have a suspicion that it's probably developed from earlier 14ers, but do I mean developed? It was influenced by. But I could be wrong. That's just my own conjecture. Certainly very strong imagery here. It does a good job of conveying a particular emotion and state of mind through the written word, and doing so whilst sounding very very consonant. So I think that's where we will leave the poetry today, and we will move on to the riddles. So we'll begin, as always, by rereading the riddle we finished on last time. I will quickly give the solution, provided I remember it, and then we will look at a new one. Our numbers small, yet smaller far our size, yet from our front such noble structures rise, as strike each ravished youth and with glad surprise, 5 noble chiefs, prime lords of our trained band, in triumph ride, decked with supreme command, a foreign hero of no spurious breed, with pompous train, submissive necks succeed, a captain with gigantic size complete, of ancient lineage, and by title great, proudly preeminent, surmounts the rest, advancing hero-like, his angled crest. When marshalled in battalions we appear, this captain leads the van, the foreign youth the year, whose noble birth the ancient Grecians boast, though here debased in this inferior post. Without our chief we're abject, mean, forlorn, and by their help the greatest acts perform. Well disciplined, taught by the German sage, not soldier-like in rank our foes engage, for most disranked the more our force alarms, when powerful art assists our native charms, with strength redoubled, then attack each fort, a sword to fools, but to the brave support. Support to those by whom discreetly used, the dire reverse, if slighted or abused. Thus rambling reign, not fearing fortune's frown. Strangers to some, to others we're well known. Known well to you, unblemished nymphs, we stand, and daily wait submiss at your command, to kiss your rosy cheek and lily hand. But should our warlike phiz infuse surprise, withdraw in time those lovely gems your eyes, such dazzling rays may scorch us now in view. Cease babbling muse, no more the theme pursue. Invite with speech each beauteous fair to name, these objects flowing from a fertile brain. And the solution to this riddle was, of course, the alphabet. The chief being the letter A, in particular the angled crest referring to the capital letter A, as here, and the foreign youth in the rear with a ancient Grecian birth was the letter Z. So, let's move on to 152. One day to Parnassus incognito straying, as the Muses and I at Crambo were playing, Apollo in frolic a would propound, to which all the 9 in their places chimed round, but not one the mystery's couplet found. He smiled and said, Girls, since the females of Britain enigmas delight in, and none this have hit on, here take it and disguise it, as children do babies, and send it next year to your rivals, those ladies. Thalia, our poetry comic presiding, the masquerade dress had the charge of providing, Two horns on its head she agreeably placed, and a neat buckle girdled affixed to its waist. A large hump on its back was like porter's pad laid, and which, though no bounty, yet use was displayed. On one side a whimsical locket was hung, which they sometimes would kick, but oft trample upon. Next its linen she put a doublet of leather, like postilion in winter to guard against bad weather, but when seasons were good or in holiday time, 'twould in velvet, brocade, or embroidery shine, as gay as the best, and as splendidly fine. She gave it no wings, but without them 'tis found to move through the air, and yet not touch the ground. To Britain's fair females devoted they'll own its worth, and the name of their servant make known. Goodness me, I have no idea. I must say, a lot of the description sounds like it's a cow. So two horns on its head. I'm not quite sure what the girdle is a reference to, but a large hump on its back. I mean, okay, cows don't have massively humped backs, but I'm fairly certain, going off the top of my head, that the older breeds would have at least had a bit of a bump there. The locket, which could well be a cowbell, which sometimes would kick but oft would trample upon. Then again, I can't imagine they'd trample upon a cowbell, would they? Then a doublet of leather, and the velvet or brocade or embroidery shine. No idea specifically what that could be a reference to, unless that's just a overly poetic way of referring to an animal's fur. Then again, this is supposed to be in the better weather, so you'd assume when whatever it is wearing less. But the problem is, even if I were reading this correctly and it is a cow, which I'm far from convinced by, there's the problem that this is the disguise for the thing, not the thing itself. The thing that is the solution to the riddle. She gave it no wings, but without them 'tis found to move through the air, and yet not touch the ground. Okay. This is something. This isn't a cow. I really have no idea. I may have to just give up on this one early. I don't like doing that, but this is a case where I not only don't know it, but I don't feel like I have any leads either. I'm just bamboozled. Hold on. Here, take it and disguise it as children do babies. Uh-huh. I'm gonna give up. I don't like giving up so early, but I really, really don't think I'm going to get it. So what was it, 152? Side saddle. Oh, okay. Let's read that again. One day to Parnassus incognito straying, as the muses and I at Crambo were playing. What is Crambo? Is that a card game? Or probably slang for a card game? A guessing game in which players guess words that rhyme with a clue word, seeking a word that is kept secret or concealed. A word rhyming with another word. Oh, I see. Apollo in frolic a word would propound, to which all the 9 in their places chimed round, but not one the mysterious couplet found. He smiled and said, girls, since the females of Britain enigmas delight in, and none this have hit on, here take it and disguise it as children do babies, and send it next year to your rivals as ladies. Thalia, o'er poetry comic presiding, the masquerade dress of the charge of providing, 2 horns on its head she agreeably placed. I mean, I assume this is a description of a saddle, but I mean, I'm sure if I saw a saddle in person, I'd recognise what it is, but I couldn't describe one in detail to you, and so I certainly don't know what the 2 horns is a reference to. And a neat buckle girdle affixed to its waist, that makes sense. A large hump on its back was like porter's pad laid, in which, though no beauty, yet use was displayed, on one side a whimsical locket was laid, which they sometimes would kick, but oft trample upon. Again, I don't know what that's a reference to. Next its linen she put a doublet of leather, like postilion in winter to guard against bad weather, but when seasons were good or in holiday time, 'twould in velvet brocade or embroidery shine. See, I feel like this is a massive clue to the fact that it's some sort of saddle, but one which I wouldn't have stood a chance at guessing. As gay as the best and as splendidly fine, she gave it no wings, but without them 'tis found to move through the air and yet not touch the ground. Well, that makes sense, although moving through the air is a bit of a bit misleading. To Britain's fair females devoted, they'll own its worth and the name of their servants make known. So I think to Britain's fair females devoted must surely be the, or likely is the clue that makes it clear that it's a side saddle. See, I thought side saddle was a way of riding, and I wasn't aware they'd use a different saddle for that. But this does sound like it's a particular type of saddle for that specific purpose of being ridden side saddle. So what I'm getting at is I can see how a lot of these clues point to a saddle now in retrospect. What I'm trying to grasp is why side saddle specifically, unless the only reference is to it being females devoted, as women would have largely ridden side saddle back in those days, or at least elegant women would have. An antique two-pommel side saddle, two-pommel design. This must be what's being described. Although I would note that the first year they mention is much later than when this was written. In the 1830s, Jules Pellier invented a side saddle design with a second lower pommel to the side saddle. In this design, still in use today, one pommel is nearly vertical, mounted approximately 10 degrees left of the top dead centre and curved gently to the right up. The rider's right leg goes around the upright or fixed pommel, which supports the right thigh of the rider when it is lying across the top centre of the saddle. The lower right leg rests along the shoulder of the left near side of the horse and up against the second pommel, called the leaping head or leaping horn, which lies below the first on the left of the saddle. It is mounted about 20 degrees off the top of the saddle. This pommel is curved gently downward in order to curve over the top of the rider's left thigh. It is attached in a manner so that it can pivot slightly to adjust to the individual rider. The rider places her left leg beneath this pommel with the top of the thigh close or lightly touching it, and places her left foot in a single stirrup on the side. Okay. I think it's clear that there must have been two pommel designs that predate the 1830s, since this book was written before then. At least I'm written and published before then. At least I'm 99% certain it was. Let's check to be sure. Uh, 1806, yes. However, that said, that explains how we know this is a side saddle specifically. Because the two horns uniquely identify it as such. I still don't know what the locket is a reference to. Historical reenactment participants, notably those in American Civil War reenactments, also tend to use the two-pommel side saddle, since the single-pommel side saddle that was used into the mid-19th century is now regarded as creating an insufficiently secure seat for safe riding. Most side saddles have a regular girth or cinch, an overgirth that holds the flaps down, and must have either a back cinch or balancing strap to hold the saddle down in the back and provide additional stability. Well, it's perfectly possible that a single pommel design existed, but as I say, the riddle does make it quite clear that, where was it? Two horns on its head, she agreeably placed, so there clearly were two horns, as they put it, so pommels, presumably. Oh well, I don't think we're likely to get any more out of this. Oh, is that what it meant by the locket? What's that called? That's the piece on a saddle which you can use to put your feet in to climb up. But if you're riding... Oh, perhaps that's what they meant when they were talking about the... what did they call it? Two-pommel design. Perhaps it only had that originally, or only that. One or the other. Okay, that must be the second pommel then, because it says it's curved downwards. So why is that not a pommel? At the upper front brow of a saddle. Okay, maybe by analogy to saddles for what's the alternative to side saddle? What's that called? I know that's the if you will usual way a horse is ridden, but what is that actually called? What is that opposed to? Hold on. I can't find a word for it here. We'll call it conventional riding, just for the purpose of having a name for it. Perhaps if, perhaps saddles for conventional riding would have an upturned top here. Maybe with horns for, like, holding on to, maybe not, I'm not sure. Certainly they would serve a different purpose. Perhaps that would be called the pommel, and by analogy, both of these upturned bits are called the pommel jointly, and because this is a separate piece, that's why it's a two-pommel design. So in the riddle, perhaps the type of saddle they're describing only has this bit and not this bit. That's my guess. Right, what's that called? Stirrup. Yes, and that is where you would place your feet if you were riding conventionally. Still can't find what the name of riding in the conventional way would be called as opposed to side saddle, but still. Anywho, right, so let's go back to the riddle. Two horns on its head she agreeably placed, so presumably the pommel, so that bit, but not including that bit because it hadn't been invented yet, and a neat buckle girdle fixed to the waist. That makes sense. Oh, you can't really see it there, but that would tie round. Yeah, you can see it better there. That ties round the horse. A large hump on its back was like a porter's paddleade. I don't know specifically what that's a reference to, but I mean, I suppose just generally the bulk of the saddle, in which, though no beauty, yet use was displayed. On one side, a whimsical locket was hung. That will be the stirrup, I suspect. Which they sometimes would kick, but oft trample upon. Trample upon because they're standing on it. That is the rider to get on top. Next, its linen she put a doublet of leather, like postilion in winter, to guard against bad weather. Why, what's postilion? A rider mounted on the near left leading horse who guides the team pulling a carriage, or a postboy, a messenger, a swift letter carrier. That seems unlikely. Like postilion in winter to guard against bad weather. Maybe then a doublet of leather. Oh, because doublet is a type of top, isn't it? A type of coat. A man's waistcoat. Okay. So apparently postilions, which is presumably postboys in this case, would wear a waistcoat of leather in winter to guard against it. To guard against, in winter to guard against bad weather. So that makes sense. But when seasons were good or in holiday time, wound in velvet, brocade or embroidery shine. So that, again, that's something I didn't know, that they would alter their saddle to be more splendid depending upon the weather. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, I can see in retrospect, if you had all that cultural knowledge already, because people were using horses all the time, how the riddle gives you adequate clues that this is not only a saddle, but a side saddle specifically. But I certainly wouldn't have originated that myself, that solution. Anywho, looks like it's about time to stop for today. So thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be streaming again on Friday and Saturday and Monday, which should be more Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, and then next Wednesday we're back round to more poetry and riddles. So once again, thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you all have a wonderful night. Good night.